In today's PLN 30, we are going to be talking about station rotation and how you might manage your blend of face-to-face students and virtual students within stations. This is the bare bones early stages of stations. So if you've never tried stations before, this is definitely where you want to start. We want to provide you with just some ideas on what stations might look like when you have these two different groups of students, or even if you just have your face-to-face students, and what instruction might look like when we are teaching during these COVID times. So a little bit about the why of station rotations. We have seen that our students desperately need the opportunity to speak with their peers and also speak with the teacher and have that one-on-one time with the teacher. And that can be difficult to manage when you've got 20, 25 students in your class. And especially when you have a mix of face-to-face and virtual. Stations allow you to create smaller learning communities where students have the opportunity to speak with their peers and use that academic language and hear their peers speak to gain some of those language skills. We know that especially in the younger grades and our EL students, they really need those opportunities to speak the vocabulary, to engage in conversation, and stations allows us an easy way to provide some instructional structure around those conversations. It makes differentiating much more manageable. So when you group your students by ability, you're able to make the information higher or lower or whatever you might need for your students. It encourages that communication and collaboration, like I said, but it also starts to shift the focus of the learning from the teacher giving all the information to the students taking ownership in that learning and allowing them to have a little bit more independence in that. So here is our very bare bones structure. If you haven't tried stations before and you're looking for a way to start, here is a great place to start. So in our minds, you could start with 3 stations. The first station would be that teacher-led station. This could be half of your face-to-face students. So you put half of your face-to-face students in this teacher-led group. The next station could be some sort of independent work, something that you would have your students work on asynchronously anyway. You could put in the second station and you would have your other half of face-to-face students in this group. And then your third station could be that direct teach, some sort of pre-recorded video that you could have your virtual students working on. And then the students will rotate. But because of our COVID times, we understand we don't necessarily want our students up and moving around. So really they would just rotate from the information, or the teacher might move over to them. For our virtual students, it might look like they do the independent and the pre-recorded video first, and then they have a time where they'll meet with the teacher. And this scheduling will really help our virtual students understand where they need to be, what they need to be working on, but still give them the opportunity to have that small group time with the teacher. So here are some ideas that we came up with what you might do in those stations. So in the teacher-led station, it could be your direct teach piece. It could also be guided practice. So really getting to see what the students know and what they don't know, and being able to help manage some of those misconceptions right away. It could be your aggressive monitoring time. We know that during our COVID times, it can be difficult to aggressively monitor both groups at the same time. So providing a small group to aggressively monitor and see the pathways and use your check marks or X's or whatever you need to do in the small group can be super helpful. It could be a time for guided reading, but it could also be a time for conferencing with students, for setting goals, or really what we were saying earlier is facilitating discussions within this small group of students, and really getting to see what your students know and what they don't know, and what adjustments you might need to make. Or really it could be a reteach opportunity as well. You might have a small group of students that you know need this particular reteach, and this would be an opportunity to do it. During that independent time, you really want the ability to let the students go work on it, but then still get feedback. Because what we've seen is if the students aren't getting feedback, if they don't feel like anyone's looking at their work, some of that time could be wasted. So some options are the playlists or flipped instruction. If you want more information on those, they're also on the Google site that we have, and there's some videos going over what those might look like. But really any sort of formative assessment, whether you're using ClassKick or Desmos or Padlet, it could be a performance task that they're working on in that independent station, or maybe they're just having an opportunity to do some independent reflection or self-assessment. We do really want our students to get feedback. So whatever you do in that independent station, make sure that whether the feedback is coming from a quiz, whether they're seeing right or wrong, or whether you are providing some feedback. I have seen teachers have ClassKick up on their computer over on the side, and their independent station is working, but they're still pulling in stickers or giving some feedback even when they have another small group in front of them. So it's just a way to manage our students, but also be able to let them feel like they have an audience and something to work towards, because we know our students are much more engaged when they feel like they have someone they're working for or towards, or if they're engaged in the information. So those are some options there. And then the pre-recorded video, I really love throwing an ed puzzle over top of a video, because it will stop your students at certain points and ask them a question, or you can give clarifying information, and it'll help scaffold the information for them. I really enjoy having when my teachers have at their teacher-led station, they also have the ed puzzle pulled up, and they can see the progress that their students are making on that. Different ways to record. I'm recording on Loom right now. If you haven't seen Loom, it's a great way. It's completely free. Just sign up as a teacher, and it allows you to have all the different tools where you can pause the video, you can trim the video, you can do a lot more than you can with the free version of Screencastify. I do still love Screencastify, and Screencastify is a tool that our students can also use. Our students can't use Loom because of their terms of service, so just be aware of that. And then even just a Google Meet recording is a simple way to record your video and then throw it into those ed puzzles. So we do have some examples here. In the link below, I will provide these slides, and so you can take a look here at some of the different lessons that we have. This is our ELAR. It's for next week, a station example. And we do want to clarify that when we're talking about stations here, we took a TEK from the reading workshop and we put it into these stations. These stations are different than the stations that for your literacy stations where we've got the choice board and students are doing this. It is separate from this. This is just a way to structure your instructional time with that particular TEK here. So I just wanted to make that clarifying piece. But here are some resources that you can take with you where we've got links. One other thing we want to clarify is this is not what we would give students, right? This is not very explanatory for them. This is more of like the teacher instructions. We would really want to make sure we had task cards for our students and times associated with that, so that they know what they're doing. And this is like the bare bones of station rotations. As we keep going, I want you to think about how might our students take some more ownership in these stations? Think about if our students really need to go to every single station. Do they have some choice in those stations? And what that could look like. Here's an 8th grade social studies example. What I really like about this example is that instead of doing a Pear Deck whole group, we've taken that Pear Deck and we've put it into the teacher-led station. So it's a jigsaw for the teacher for a small group setting. And so the teacher can have each student do a little piece of it and then have a conversation about that. Instead of doing whole group and having to stop and only knowing if a few of your students have the information, you're doing it with this small learning community. An independent resource would be Quizlet. That is a great tool that you could have them practicing the vocabulary. But what I love about this station is there's now another piece. So they're not only just practicing the vocabulary in Quizlet, they're also having to do something with that. So this is a trading card activity where you can assign a certain word to each student based on the student needs or maybe some data you have on that student. And then the students will create the trading card, and then they can share with each other what they found, and now they have a whole deck of trading cards for vocabulary. And then throwing again those Edpuzzle videos, those pre-recorded videos into your stations is a great way to be formatively assessing the students, but also allowing you to have some one-on or small group time with other students. And then here's a 6th grade math example. In the pre-recorded video station, instead of doing it in an Edpuzzle, I put it into a worksheet where the students will do the problem first, but if they have trouble with the problem or if they want to check their answer, there is a QR code where they can scan it and it'll take them to a video of me solving the problem with them, so they get some immediate feedback. This is just another option for you if you're looking at different ways to do pre-recorded videos. I probably would have also added the link in there for our students who are doing this virtually. At the teacher-led station, this would be a great way to take the problems that they did at the pre-recorded session and review those word problems and start giving some targeted support, or do an aggressive monitoring there of one particular word problem where you really want to see those 3 pathways. And then the independent here is a class kick with one-step conversions. This is just a great way for you to be able to formatively assess your students along the way, so definitely check that out. Here is just a template of what this might look like if you grouped your students from face-to-face 1, face-to-face 2, and your VLA students, and what that might look like. I would definitely put times on here and be able to let your VLA kids know what time they need to come back. So in this example, the students start at Station 2 first, the VLA students do, and then they move to the independent, and then they move to the pre-recorded, so you can see kind of on here what that might look like. There are 2 options here, some different templates that you could look at, so definitely check those out. They'll force a copy for you, and then you can make it your own. Some different ways that you might want to think about grouping your students. You might want to do it by ability. That is an easy way to give targeted support and differentiation. But you could also start blending those VLA and face-to-face kids, so they have the opportunity to interact with other peers and other individuals and get some different perspectives. You might need to group them by social needs. You might know that some kids get along better than other kids, and this would be a better fitting for them, or a student is a better leader, and so this would be a good person to put in a group. And you might want to just do it based on interest. As you start seeing your students' passions and aptitudes, grouping those students is a great way for them to push one another in their passions. Some things to think about when you are creating stations is, what is the objective of each station? And then thinking about, okay, if this is the objective, how are they going to show that objective to me? Definitely think about how you want to launch your stations. You don't want to just go straight into them. You need to give them some ideas about why you're doing the stations and what they're going to be able to accomplish by the end of the stations. Timing of these stations is going to be important for you to think about. How long do they have to transition between stations? Although we're doing all of it mostly virtual, you need to think about, okay, do they know how to get to the Google Classroom or the Seesaw piece of this? What would those transition times look like? For those independent stations, definitely having the opportunity for our VLA kids to log off and just come back if they have questions will be important. And thinking about limiting that synchronous time or direct instruction, where does that come? And then especially thinking about how you're going to formatively assess your students. How do we know that the students are learning? And how are we going to know that they are showing mastery of the TEKS? And what does that look like? So those are just some things to consider. We have a ton of resources. Check it out on the website, or check it out in this link below where we have these slides. And just be sure to keep following us on YouTube. We are so happy to help you guys with any of your station needs. So definitely reach out to your instructional technology coach, and they would be happy to help you make this happen.